Fear. Have you ever felt fear? Fear comes very naturally to the human mind. When a child is born, it fears touching something hot. It touches it once and then realizes that I do not have to do that. And it learns by this protective mechanism called fear. Fear, as we grow up, our relationship with fear evolves and changes. It is different when we are adolescents, it is different when we are adults, and continues to evolve throughout our journey of life. It is based on what we have learned, it is based on our experiences, and it is also based on what society tells us. But today, I'm going to help you reframe fear not as an adversary, not as an enemy, but as a friend, as an ally. Hi, I'm Utkarsh Narang. I'm a phenomenalist, a TEDx speaker, an author, leadership coach, and a facilitator who works from Melbourne, Australia, and works with clients across the world. I find joy in helping people be driven by fear and live courageous lives. This human life, it's a gift, and I want each one of us to realize that this gift needs to be lived fully while we are still alive. Now, if you were to go back to fear, just a few minutes before I was recording this video, I pulled my mic and the wire pulled the glass, my coffee mug, onto the floor. It shattered into pieces. Now, I have this learned response that if I touch that glass, there is a possibility that I'll cut myself. The fear protects me and allows me to be safe in this situation. But fear also paralyzes me. Fear will also tell me that, Utkarsh, you don't have to collect that glass. I have to act despite the fear. I have to act beyond the fear. Now, as a child growing up in India, I had parents who were both doctors. And so from a very young age, I was told, Utkarsh, study hard, else you'll fail. The fear of failure. Find a good job, study well to earn well, else who will marry you? The fear of never finding my loving partner. And in India, we don't even leave the gods. Utkarsh, do the right thing, pray to the gods, else they'll punish you. The fear of God, the Almighty God itself. Now, as a child, I learned these fears, but I was able to make choices over time that allowed me to move away from fear as an enemy to fear as an ally. I'm going to share with you 3 steps that are going to help you make this shift as well. The first step to understanding what fear is all about, what fear is doing to you, is it paralyzing you or is it propelling you, is to acknowledge the fear. Let me give you an example. If you're thinking of changing a job right now or starting a business, the first reaction that comes to the mind is like, what if I fail? What if I hate the next job? What if I don't do well in that business? And that stops you, that protects you from moving forward. And that's the fear taking over. You got to acknowledge that in this moment, I'm fearful of certain things. What are those things? If you honestly think about it, we do not fear the dark. We fear what can emerge out of the dark. We do not fear heights, but we fear, what if I fall from this height? And that acknowledgement is the first step to moving beyond the fear, to understanding fear as a friend rather than an enemy. Now that we've taken the first step, the second step is that you can decide to do 2 things. You can either act or not act. Inaction or action, the fear will still prevail. It is up to you which of the 2 paths will you choose. The path that I've often chosen in my life is that of action. I used to be a physiotherapist, physical therapist for my friends in the US, and I did that for about 6-7 years, till I realized that this was not my life's calling and I wanted to do something else. And that's when I moved away, took a leap from the outside world, but within me there were like small steps that I took that helped me go beyond my fear. The choice to act is completely yours. The choice to not act is also yours. You have to decide, what do you choose, and make sure that you choose wisely. The third thing that I want to share with you is, we've been given this concept that what's going to happen in the future. As I'm recording this, it's about 12:07 p.m. my time here in Melbourne, Australia. Now, if I had to ask myself, or if I had to ask you, what's the time? And you look at your watch, and you'll say, Utkarsh, it's so-and-so. And I'll ask you, in 14 minutes from now, what will you be thinking? We don't know that. We cannot predict an exact thought in our mind in 14 minutes from now. Then why the hell are we trying to predict the future? I think that's the big lesson I want to take away, that future is a man-made concept. The future, however much we plan for it, is going to take its own turn. I often talk to my friends in the US and I tell them, I'm on my Wednesday, you're on Tuesday. Let me tell you the lottery tickets, and maybe you'll win it. But the thing is that our actions, the moments that happen in this universe, they all change the future. And so you and I, we cannot predict the future. Then why get paralyzed by the fear of it? And instead, start to take action, start to make progress. Whenever I think of these things, the first reaction that the brain gives is, Utkarsh, what if you fail? What if you lose that relationship? What if? And a lot of what ifs come up. But I ask myself, and I want you to ask yourself, but what if you succeed? What if everything happens in the right way? What if everything happens the way you're imagining it? What would open up for you? So these are 3 steps: the acknowledgement, the choice that action or inaction is completely yours to take, and future is a myth, it's a prediction. We don't know what the future is going to be, certainly, so we can plan for it, but we don't have to let it paralyze us. By taking these right actions, taking these right steps, you can make fear an ally, and it'll allow you to live lives that are courageous. I hope this was of value to you. If it was, look forward to many conversations. Wishing you all the best. And after I'm done with this video, I'm going to go and collect that glass and make sure that I don't let fear paralyze me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Relatable Voice of the RV Book Fair 2024. I'm your host, Lucia Matuonto, and today we are diving into our panel From Sweeping Romance to Historical Adventures, Writing Across Genres. We are thrilled to have 2 wonderful authors joining us who share a passion for storytelling. So first, we have Mandy Eve-Barnett, a prolific author of multiple genres. So welcome, Mandy. You are welcome. We are super happy to have you here today, Mandy. And next, we are pleased to introduce Donna Goodacre. Is that correct? Am I saying
Goodacre.
Yes. Welcome, Donna.
Pleased to be here.
So, and I'm also delighted to introduce my co-host, Pat Backley. Pat is an author of 8 books, a columnist for the RV magazine, and has been an integral part of the RV Book Fair since its first year was in 2021. Wow, 3 years, Pat. So thank you for joining us, Pat.
Thank you so much for inviting me to co-host with you again. I just love doing this every year because I get to meet so many fabulous new authors. So thank you very much and welcome, ladies. I'm delighted to be here with you. Donna, I met you at a book fair earlier in the year, so it's lovely to see your face again. And I'm looking forward to a really lively discussion. So let's go, shall we? Okay, to start, Mandy, as a multi-genre best-selling author and freelance writer, can you tell us how your storytelling career began?
Actually, when I emigrated to Canada, I wanted something creative for me, and I just happened upon a writing group and thought I would try it. And all of a sudden, I sort of found having something that was like make-believe, made up from scratch, really appealed to me. And I've found that now I can sort of go with an idea or a character or a setting and then just create something from my imagination, and I really enjoy that.
That's great. I mean, I write historical fiction myself, amongst other things. So it's always good for me to talk to other authors who write in the same or similar genres, because we all have such similarities. We all started, something triggered us to start. And then it's almost like once you started, you can't stop. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and I also, when I interviewed Mandy for the first time, I checked her website and I see that she writes about many genres for children's books and many others. So I think it's just wonderful, because I think I cannot write some genres, so I think this is fabulous when you can do it. So now, Donna, you are a retired English and foreign languages teacher. Am I correct?
Mhm. That's right.
So, when did you first start writing? Was after
Well,
Mhm.
despite the fact that I'm an English teacher, I really didn't have any interest in writing a book. But it was just when my mother started traipsing around cemeteries trying to find ancestors and dragged me with her, that I kind of got a bit of an interest in the family, at least. And then I just thought about 5 or 6 years ago that my children should really know the stories, because they're their ancestors as well. And it just all went from there, from me just making a record, really, just a document of all of the great-great-grandparents, etc. Then filling it out, and it just suddenly turned into a 103,000 word novel.
Mhm. Yes, and what? No, I will ask it after. So let's go, Pat, because otherwise I'll be.
Okay. I just want to do a disclaimer here. I met Donna in April at a book fair. We were both there with our books, and I was going to buy her book, but my money had run out by that point because I bought loads of other books. So I now have your book waiting on my to be read pile, and I haven't got around to it yet. Had I known I was going to interview you today, I'd have got my act together and read it quickly. But it sounds fascinating, and I can't wait to start. Obviously, the commonality is that it's basically about New Zealand, and I'm assuming it's New Zealand, isn't it? Because Donna
It's
lives half
England.
the time,
Yeah.
right?
Sorry, I was just
And
going to say it's England and India and New Zealand, this first book.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, so it's even more interesting. Because am I right in thinking, Donna, that you live half your life in New Zealand and half in Australia? Yeah.
Yes, I'm fortunate enough to be able to go between the two countries. And my family's in Australia, husband and 2 children and grandson. But New Zealand is my base, I suppose you'd call it, where I come back for some peace and quiet and where I can write.
That's so interesting. And I think for all of us, our personal circumstances and where we happen to be in the world do affect our writing, don't they? You know, it kind of
Sure.
wherever you are inspires you in some way. Anyway, I'm diversifying. As Lucia knows, I have to be reined in because I get very excited talking to people and I kind of go off track. So right, let's carry on. Mandy, what inspired you to write historical fiction? Was it particularly one thing or just an accumulation?
I think the books I've done that have like are history based or sort of have history weaved into them is because living in England, you're surrounded by it. So you've got something that as old as Stonehenge, going all the way up to modern, and everything in between. So I've written about medieval, I've written sort of Victoriana, and I suppose it's in your blood as an English person because you live within it. It's not unusual to see castles and ancient sites, and so it's something that you live with, and it's not until you start writing and you think, well, I know that. So I mean, it's a big bonus, obviously, to have that historical sort of history at school work. But then as you start writing as an adult, you think, oh, I've accumulated all this knowledge without really understanding that you have kept it in the brain. And it's easier then to think, well, yes, I've been to a castle or a mansion somewhere, and you can utilize the visits that you had into your writing because you've touched that tapestry. You've shouldn't have done, but there. So you get not just a visual, but you get to know the atmosphere and the tactile part of that history. And I think that gives you more depth when you're writing it.
Yes, I agree entirely. And I think being an English person, because I was obviously English until I was 59 when I immigrated, you're right, Mandy. It's an integral part of you without you even realizing it. I mean, at school, I hated research, really didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy school that much anyway.
Me
But
too.
now in my 70s, I absolutely love it. I get passionately excited when I can start delving. And of course, these
Sure.
days it's so much easier with Google. You know, in the old days, we authors would have had to go to the library, get out great big books and blah, blah.
Yeah.
But now you just click a button. What did chimney sweeps do in 1872? And you've got the answer at your
Of
fingertips.
course.
We're very spoiled. But I agree with you. Having that history as an integral part of us makes it very
Mm.
easy, because in our heads we can imagine things because we've grown up with them and seen them. So thank you very much. Over to you, Lucia. I'll
Welcome.
shut up for a minute.
Yes, I want to ask Donna, how about you, Donna? What drew you to this genre, historical romance?
I guess it was just because, you know, of trying to provide family history. But like with you others have said, it's once you get started, it's just so fascinating. And yeah, me too. I didn't enjoy research at school. I found history totally boring. We had to learn the dates of every possible British war, you know, from the Middle Ages up to the present day. And that was what history was, you know, just learning times and dates and not really any personal stuff. And yeah, now that I'm a little bit older, and you can start delving into what people were really like, it's fascinating to know. And you've got all the dates there with your historical fiction, but you have to fill in the other bits. And, you know, the other bits are what makes it so fascinating to find out how long did it take to transport a body from London to Manchester in the 1800s, you know, like it's not something you normally do.
And Donna, wouldn't our history teachers be proud of us, of the women we are now?
Yes.
That
If only I was still alive.
So proud.
Well, they are history now. Well,
Yes,
mine are.
you know, I read historical romance. I used to read a lot when I was younger. And, you know, I miss the romance, you know, the real romance. I think people nowadays are not too romantic. So I'm very into romance novels. So it's very interesting. And I have a question for the three of you. Out of script, are you romantic, Mandy? Do you consider yourself a romantic person?
No,
No,
isn't that bizarre?
no.
I don't really sort of connect with the flowers and chocolate. I'd rather have like a deep connection with someone intellectually, because that shows the person rather than the act. Does that make sense? And yes, I mean, you know, someone says, well, you know, I'd really like to take you somewhere romantic. I mean, okay, well, Italy's my one. That's where you can take me. You may not see me because I'll be busy exploring. But I wouldn't say I'm romantic per se. I like the connection. I like someone to love the whole person. And that I think that's the basis of a lot of my books. It's a connection between people that I find the most fascinating and the most intriguing.
Me too. I'm with you there. I'm not a romantic person either, and nor is my husband, just as well. But we've been together for 40 years, so I suppose that says something. But yeah, I find it difficult to write romance scenes, and I know, I mean, they need to be there because it's part of life, and I'm just not very good at it. And I admire people who can just write pages and pages about a kiss. But that's not me. I'm kind of, they go to bed and they wake up the next morning. So, yeah, I need to practice that a little bit more.
And Pat, how about you?
Okay, well, I kind of am a bit the same now, but probably until I was maybe even 10 years ago, I was a romantic. I really thought that, you know, everything was going to be lovely and rosy, despite having two failed marriages, a failed live-in. I think part of me, there is still a little bit of a romantic in there, but I'm a realist now. I realize that the only person that can truly make you happy is yourself. But it's taken me a long time to reach that point. I was always thinking, I've always been a people pleaser. So I've spent the vast majority of my 73 years trying to please men. It's got me absolutely nowhere because now I'm 73 and alone, but that's beside the point. But I know that at the back of my head, there's still a little bit of me that is a romantic. I just haven't bothered to use it in recent years. So who knows? One day my daughter is convinced that when I'm in my 80s, I'll suddenly produce this lovely man from the ether and marry him. But I really
my
hope
goodness.
I really hope that's not going to happen. I actually don't think I want to.
Never late, right?
Yeah, that's right. So enough of me and my romance or not. Mandy, can you tell us a little about your book? Is it Malgraff's Dawning? Is that how you pronounce it?
Malgraff, yeah.
Mal-
Malgraff's Dawning is actually, although it's a prequel story, it was the third book I wrote in the trilogy. And Malgraff is actually not romantic at all. She is the malevolent witch who tries to place herself within a kingdom. And the beginning of the trilogy was something called the Ripen Kingdom, where a sorceress meets up with a troubadour and they help the king overcome this Malgraff person. And then when I had lots of readers say, we need the next one, I did a next one, Ripen Trilogy, Ripen Legacy. And then just for my own amusement, I decided that Malgraff should have her own story. And I know a lot of writers like to go to the darker side, you know, and just delve into someone who is not really likable, but then you understand her life and how she became what she became. And I just enjoyed continuing the story within sort of medieval England, because I know that era quite well. And she's become sort of a favourite for the moment. I mean, you always have a favourite person in one of your books until the next book. But I enjoyed her because I could, you know, really delve into her psyche.
Thank you.
And Donna, can you share more about finding Miriam?
Yes, like I said, it's actually set in England, India, and New Zealand because it started off with my mother trying to find her great grandmother, Miriama Portiki, a Maori lady who married an English captain. Oh no, sorry, she didn't marry him. They had an affair. He was already married. And it starts off it starts off in England, and it follows his career, and then he goes to India, goes to Afghanistan, so there's a bit of war in it, and then he meets his wife there, goes back to England, can't settle down because, you know, after being in Afghanistan and India, what is there to do? Sitting around the gentlemen's clubs in London. So he became a fencible, which were soldiers who came out to New Zealand in the 1840s, 1850s to control the natives. But instead, he ended up having an affair with one, and that's Miriama. And it's just really, she's the central character of the book, even though it has, you know, other characters who are important as well. And it's all about the effect she has ultimately on everyone else in the story. And we did find her in the end. Mum unfortunately had passed away by the time we found where her grave was. But we did eventually, through the power of the internet, find out. So Miriama was found.
Oh, so this is kind of a real story.
Yes.
Mhm.
So,
Interesting.
I mean, that was handy for me because I had the facts. I had basic facts. He even wrote a book, Captain Greenwood. So I could use his book, which I actually found incredibly boring, but it was all about the campaign in Afghanistan, and in it, I gleaned a whole lot of information which I then added to. And so yes, it's all based on fact, and the names are real. The people, the dates and everything are actually real, which was a bit of a worry when I first thought about publishing it, but there's been no repercussions so far. So I was lucky I had that framework.
I think that's wonderful, Donna, because that's exactly how I enjoy writing. My first two historical fictions, Daisy and the Second Daisy, were purely invented in my head. But then I realized how much I loved research and writing about history. So I started writing, like you've done, about my ancestors. So I've just done the third one in the series. It's wonderful to write about your own ancestors because you're bringing them back to life. You're leaving a real legacy. My daughter, who's 30, said that she cried all the way through all three of those books because she never met any of those people. Or she met my parents, who are the latest one, but she never met my grandparents or obviously her great-great-grandparents. And so for her, it's brought those people to life. And that's what you've done with your book. I think it's wonderful. It's such a huge legacy to leave. So thank you. Now I've got to read it. I might have to put all my other big pile aside and read yours now because
Yes, do.
and I think this is why these interviews are so great, because people get to see the person behind the writing. And very often, if they like the person, they find the person interesting, they will go and read your books, even if it's not in their normal genre. Do you agree, Lucia? It kind of inspires. Yeah.
Totally. That's why I started this podcast also because I started writing and I published my first book during the pandemic, but also because when I was a kid, I used to go to Barnes and Nobles in the US, and I was looking at the books, and I was curious about the author, and we basically just saw a small picture on the back of the book, and I said, I was so interested about knowing more about the author. So when I started this podcast, I said I want that they can tell about their lives. That's why the RV podcast is a journey where I go to. For example, I went to Canada to interview Mandy, and she talks about her life and why she moved from the UK to Canada.
Yeah.
I believe that our readers are also interested about us. We are also a great inspiration for them. If we can, they also can maybe when they want to write a book. So that's what happened. And also, I think, Pat, you have a good question for Mandy now.
I do. I just wanted to say first that, Lucia, I'm so grateful to you for starting this whole RV book fair thing, because and the interviews you do and the podcast and everything. That's how I met Lucia 3 years ago. She interviewed me on the RV and we just obviously became friends. But you do such a wonderful job. You have given a space to so many authors over the years who a lot of us would just get lost in the depths of all the Amazon piles. And this way we can be seen and people get to hear our names. And so thank you. Great job. Okay, I'll stop talking. Mandy, do you base your I mean, we have kind of touched on this. Do you base your stories on real people and real events, or is it all completely made up in your head?
Most of it is in my head. I don't use real people. I might use the amalgamation of several people I know or that I've met over time. But the actual personalities are within my imagination. But saying that, a lot of them will sort of steer me in different directions where I think, I know where you're going, but then they say, no, that's not what's happening. So I just go with the flow of what they're telling and where they want to be and what's going to be happening. And the places can be real, or yet again, I sort of merge certain places that I've been. I mean, I was very lucky that my secondary school in the UK was actually Elizabethan Manor. and there was a battle between the Roundheads and the Cavaliers around the school in the time. So that sort of based me in history physically. And that's, I think, where I thought I need more of that in my book. So it's relating me as a person to history, and giving voice to a made-up person, but who could be real as well. And that's, I've enjoyed that aspect of the writing, because it's given me a vehicle for people to sort of enjoy history without it being now remember this date, remember this date. You know, you don't by rote you can do all the dates, but I think if you can be immersed in a setting and think, well, I could actually go and visit that setting, then it makes it more real for people. And that's how I enjoy making my stories.
Mm-hmm. So, Donna, how much, not, you don't need to say 5 hours a day, but how much research goes into crafting your books?
Wow, I've never actually thought about how much time, but I mean, quite often I could research for maybe go down a rabbit hole, maybe 5 hours, and come up with a page.
Wow.
Other times I can just, when I'm not, trying to find out the background, then it's, it flows quite quickly. But research hours are way more than the actual writing hours. And if you didn't like doing it, well, you wouldn't do it.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Don't you agree, Beck?
Yeah, I agree totally. I agree totally. Sometimes the research is more fun than the writing, I find. You come up with about 27 other topics that you then need to write a book about, which is crazy. But yeah. Thanks, Donna. For both of you, do you have a favorite time period? I know, Donna, you're in the middle of writing another book. Is that a sequel to Finding
It
Miriama?
is.
Yeah,
It's a
okay.
sequel, and it just carries straight on from basically the 1880s, for about 20 years. So yeah, that's my time period that I've chosen to write in.
Yeah, I think it's great if you can choose a time period. Mine's kind of Victorian till modern. But Mandy, how about you? Do you have a favorite time period?
Not really. I like dabbling into all of them, because I think every era and period has its own sort of individuality. So yeah, medieval is the clothing, what they ate, how they got from A to B, all that sort of thing. But then, when I've done Victorian, that's really very different. The etiquette and, woman's place and all that sort of thing. And then you just think, well, how would people live? How would I live within that environment? And I think that gives you a good springboard into understanding how people react and, what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. I mean, especially the women. I mean, although they're sort of the powerhouse that, I'm not told they're the powerhouse, you understand the vitality and the vital role within that time period. So it makes everyone understand how you go through life within a certain structure, the laws, the etiquette, what's available, what's not available, and also your social standing, because a lot of us from England understand that there was a huge difference between someone that lived as a servant and someone that lived as the lord of the manor, and there was everything in between, and there was a hierarchy that carried on for a very, very long time. So that gives you an idea of, how your specific character deals with life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. I agree.
Victorian era was, I love their outfits, the dresses, the hats, everything is so beautiful, was so beautiful. And do you also, do you read, or let's say, do you find about their outfits, attire online, or do you check their old books? I know that Pat's Daisy is during Victorian time. Yes, I remember because I read it.
Yeah,
How do you?
yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and there's some old catalogs. I use old catalogs like from the Army and Navy stores. These are obviously English. Big fat books. And they were basically like mail order catalogs. People would order their dresses or their fireplace surrounds or whatever. They're absolutely fascinating, and they show the period costumes. So you can write in quite detail, and you learn so much. I just don't get me started on that, otherwise we'll never end the discussion.
And Donna, do you have a favorite period of time, like time period, sorry, that you enjoy writing about?
Well, I suppose it's because that's where my books are set. It's the Victorian time as well, starting off in, say, 1850 through to, I think there'll be a third book, so that will be probably, you got to write 3, don't you? It will be up to about the 1920s. But I just love, once I started, finding out about how women in particular managed to survive in all classes. And I mean, it's not just the outward appearances, but also what they could actually do, to make a mark and to not toe the line, I suppose. And when I first started my first book, Finding Miriama, Catherine is the English wife, and she wasn't going to feature in my book at all. Well, she was there. She was the wife of, Captain Greenwood.
Yeah.
And then I just got more and more fascinated with her and what she actually did. And there's not much on the internet about her. If you're writing about well-known people, it's easy, but there wasn't much about her. And I just thought about all these women who follow their husbands from here to there, across to India, up to Afghanistan, and you don't really hear much about them. And so it got me interested in the lifestyle that she could have lived. And I made her a kind of a nurse. She did come from a medical family in India called the Perus in Calcutta. So I knew that much. And so I kind of imagined how she would spend her life, without just being someone there who cooked, and I don't think she cleaned because they were sort of upper class. But yeah, it's just, I think it's more the lifestyle of that period that I was really interested in. And like I said, it started off being about Captain Greenwood because he was the one on, he was the kind of a hero. But it ended up being more about her. And then, of course, in New Zealand, Miriama, another strong woman who grew up in a totally different, background, where really the women there had a lot more freedom. They weren't constrained by conventions. They often met grisly ends, but they had more free spirit, I suppose. But they weren't restricted at all. So I think I've gone off track there, but what I was trying to say was that whole period of women starting to have a voice again really appealed to me.
That's fascinating, Donna. And I love to hear you speak with such passion, because I'm very passionate about my writing. Well, I'm passionate about everything, but about my writing. And don't you think we are all very lucky that we've got this chance to use our, obviously, storytelling talents to explore how other women lived centuries ago? I mean, you kind of, when you're writing, you put yourself in their shoes, don't you? So you're living life through their shoes. It's good for you. I'm very impressed. Anyway, Lucia, probably we're getting quite close to the end, I think, aren't we? So shall we just ask what can we expect from both of you in the future? Have you got any, well, obviously you've both got more books, but any projects you want to talk about?
Oh my
No, Mandy.
goodness. Okay, so on my list, I've got a crime trilogy, I've got contemporary romance, I've got very spicy romance, and I'm thinking about a non-fiction book. because I recently retired and I want to put something together for people that are approaching that. So that's more than enough to keep me going for the moment.
Wow. I'm in awe.
Can you write nonfiction? For me, it's so difficult to write nonfiction.
Well, I've done it before. I've done it for clients, so it's not as though it's, you know, something I haven't done. So it's just sort of compiling something, because a lot of people said to me when I announced I was retiring, I said, well, what are you going to do with your time? I'm going, well, how long have you got? Because I had so many things I was going to be doing. And I mean, 3 gentlemen that I spoke to said, oh yeah, well, I thought I would be doing the same, but I went back within 6 months. And I'm thinking, that is so sad that you had nothing in your life that could fulfill you and interest you. And you have to try new things. And you know, I've done a lot of things in the last year that I didn't have the opportunity all the time to do when I was working. So yeah, I think you have to have an open mind and, you know, be brave about trying new things. Because if you think about it, okay, if you're 65, then you might live till you're 95. What are you going to do with those 30 years? You know, it's a long time. It's another lifetime. So you might as well do something with it. That's my viewpoint.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think we're
Okay,
lucky,
Donna,
you know?
your turn now, Donna. What plans have you got? Doesn't have to be book orientated. It can be anything.
No. But it tends to be, I'll just grab this. This is my, I don't know if you can see it. You probably can't see it. Hang on.
No,
because of the background. Yes.
See,
Oh, yeah.
see it?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's the character of my new novel.
It's
very
handsome. Yeah, handsome man.
Yes.
Very
That's
handsome.
Hōhepa. So he is the protagonist in my book that I've just finished. And so that's done. It's just being edited at the moment. So it'll hopefully be out by early next year. And then, like I said, I think there has to be 3. So that's me. But I mean, I agree, like you have to have something that fulfills you after you retire. Like I retired 3 years ago now, and I just so wish I'd started writing 20 years ago or more, but I didn't have the means. Like I had to work, had a day job, you know, families and things like that. I think it's wonderful that you can now have a second fulfillment in your life, and it's not like working.
Absolutely.
You know, like, yeah.
Yes.
So that's
much more fun.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree entirely. I mean, I started my author career during lockdown, and so I'm 73 and a half. I'm now at that point in my life where I'm very proud of the half. You know, like kids are, they say, oh, I'm 5.5. And now I say I'm 73 and a half. This is the best career I've ever had, this writing, you know, and as you say, Donna, it's a shame that we didn't start it sooner, but in some ways, we obviously weren't ready. You know, we needed to have all this wisdom and experience to be able to write the way we do. So thank you so much, ladies. It's been an absolute joy. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you. Just a delight. So now I have to run away and get all your books and read them all. But that for me is the most fun, is meeting all of these lovely new authors. So thank you very much for sharing your insights and your wisdom and your books with us. I'm very grateful.
Yes.
Lucia.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mandy, for your presence. And it's the second time, maybe the third time. Third time is a charm.
Yes.
And thank you, Donna. It's a pleasure to see you and to finally talk with you today. Thank you for sharing your creative journeys and insights with us. It has been wonderful learning more about your writing processes and, of course, passions. And Pat, thank you very much for co-hosting yes, the panel with me. This is precious. And also for our audience, thank you everyone for joining us for Uncut with Lucia, hosted by WorldAuthors.org. Be sure to check out the works of Mandy and Donna, as well as other featured authors. Also, you can download our free magazine at www.relatable-media.com, and you can see more about Mandy, about Donna, about Pat, and other guests. And happy reading and enjoy the RV Book Fair 2024. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you.